Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into the amazing world of photography, and I want you to think about it in a new way. Not just as snapping pictures, but as learning a whole new language. A language that's written with light, and it lets us capture a moment in time and tell these incredible stories. So, let's get started.
You know that feeling, right? You're looking at the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen, or your friend has this perfect, genuine laugh. You grab your camera, take the shot, and meh, it just looks flat. The magic you saw with your own two eyes just isn't there. It's honestly one of the most common frustrations out there.
So what is the secret? How do you close that gap between what you see and what you actually capture? Well, it all boils down to one thing: light. Photography literally means drawing with light, and the trick isn't just seeing the light. It's about learning how to control it. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to learn the basic grammar of that language.
Okay, so before we jump into all the cool, artistic, creative stuff, we have to get the fundamentals down. We need to understand the technical side of how a picture is even made. This is where you learn to take the camera off auto and really take control.
The first and honestly the most important word in this new language is exposure. All it means is getting the right amount of light. A photo with good exposure isn't crazy bright and it's not super dark. You can see details in the shadows and in the highlights. It's that perfect, just right balance, and it is the foundation of every single photo you will ever take.
So how do we get that perfect balance? How do we actually control the light? Well, it all comes down to a concept that every photographer lives by: the exposure triangle. It's basically the three main dials you can turn to manage how much light gets into your camera. Let's break down the three sides of this triangle. We've got aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Now here's the cool part. Each one controls light, yes, but each one also gives you a totally unique creative superpower. This is where the real fun begins. First up, aperture. Just think of it like the pupil of your eye. When you're in a dark room, your pupil gets bigger to let in more light, right? And when you step out into the bright sun, it gets tiny. Your camera's aperture does the exact same thing. It's an opening in the lens that can get bigger or smaller. Now, we measure aperture with something called f-stops, and this is the one kind of weird thing you have to remember. A small f number, like f2, means a big, wide-open aperture that lets in tons of light. A large f number, like f22, means a teeny tiny opening. But here's aperture's superpower. You know that gorgeous blurry background you see in professional portraits? That's aperture at work. A wide aperture isolates your subject and makes everything else just melt away. It's an incredible tool for telling the viewer exactly what to look at. Next up, we've got shutter speed. So if aperture is the pupil, you can think of shutter speed as the eyelid. It's simply how long that eyelid stays open, letting light hit the sensor. It could be for a super short time, like 1/1000th of a second, or it could be open for, 10, 20, 30 seconds. And check this out. This shows you exactly what shutter speed can do creatively. On the left, a fast shutter speed completely freezes the Ferris wheel. Every detail is sharp. But on the right, with a slow shutter speed, those lights turn into these beautiful, dreamy streaks of motion. So you get to decide. Do you want to freeze a moment in time, or do you want to show the beauty of its movement? All right, our last piece of the puzzle is ISO. This one's a little different. It doesn't actually change the amount of light coming into the camera. Instead, it digitally boosts the signal. It changes how sensitive the camera sensor is to whatever light is there. Back in the day, you'd actually buy different film rolls for this: a low ISO film for bright sunny days and a high ISO film for shooting indoors. Luckily for us, now we just change it with a button. And you can see here, as you crank up the ISO, the photo gets much brighter, which is great for dark situations. But, and this is a big but, there's a trade-off. The higher the ISO, the more you start to see this digital noise or graininess in the picture. So the goal is always to keep your ISO as low as possible for the best quality. Okay, now that we know how to control the light inside the camera, let's talk about the very first thing that light touches: the lens. Your choice of lens is maybe the biggest decision you can make. It completely changes the perspective and the whole feel of your photo. It's your window to the world. So let's talk about the two main types. On one hand, you've got wide-angle lenses. These capture a huge, expansive view. They make you feel like you're standing right there in the scene. On the complete opposite end, you have telephoto lenses. These act like a telescope, bringing things that are far away up close and personal. And then you have lenses in the middle, often called normal lenses, that see the world pretty much the same way our own eyes do. And just look at this. This is what a wide-angle lens does. It's not just taking a picture of the landscape, it's pulling you into it. It makes that sky feel absolutely massive and gives you this incredible sense of scale and awe.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the science, now for the fun part, the art. Composition is simply the way you arrange everything in your picture. It's about being a tour guide for the viewer's eyes, leading them through the photo. How you frame your shot can be the difference between a quick snapshot and a piece of art that really makes people stop and look. And the most famous guideline for this is the rule of thirds. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Just imagine a tic-tac-toe grid drawn over your screen. The idea is that instead of sticking your subject right in the dead center, you place them along one of those lines or where the lines cross. For some reason, it just creates a more balanced and interesting photo.
Here's a perfect example for landscapes. You see how the horizon isn't cutting the photo in half? Instead, it's placed on that bottom third line. What does that do? It makes that huge, dramatic sky the real star of the show. If the ground were more interesting, you do the opposite and put the horizon on the top line. You get to decide what's important.
So you can see how it all clicks together, right? You use the exposure triangle to get the technical stuff right, you pick your lens to create your perspective, and then you use composition to arrange it all in a way that's beautiful and tells a story. It's this perfect mix of science and art.
And it's pretty cool to think that when you pick up a camera, you're becoming part of this long, amazing history. It started way back in 1826 with the very first photo ever, which by the way took 8 hours to expose, and then moved to Kodak making cameras for everyone, and now to the digital age where we take billions of photos every single day.
But here's the really important thing to remember. The gear has changed like crazy, but the reason we do it, that's exactly the same. Whether it's a chemical reaction on film or digital pixels on a sensor, the goal is still to see the world, control light, and hold on to a moment that would otherwise be gone forever.
The legendary photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson really just said it all. He said to photograph is to put on the same line of sight the head, the eye, and the heart. It's not about the gear. It's about bringing together what you're thinking, what you're seeing, and what you're feeling.
So, we've covered the basics. You now know the language of light. You have the tools to take control of your camera and create something meaningful. The only question left is, what story are you going to tell? Now go out there and start shooting. Thanks for joining me.